Mr. President, let me start by expressing thanks to colleagues who have expressed their views and replied to my speech, to Manfred Weber and Jean-Claude Juncker, who both mentioned the topic of Great Britain. Let me say, certainly as I see it, I think it is extremely important, the spirit in which we deal with the leaving of Great Britain and accept it and determine it. I accept the decision of the people of Great Britain. It must be respected, and Michel Barnier and Jean-Claude Juncker are to be thanked because I think the spirit in which we are setting about this will decide for decades the way in which we will be able to have a partnership. And UK has shown via Theresa May that they wish to be part of Europe. It will come down to having shares of cooperation, areas where we can cooperate, and that is exactly what we want to do. I'm saying that certainly as far as the German government is concerned. Now let me pick up some of the topics that were mentioned. One topic which I think Mr. Legutko is important is the fact that Germany is a country with 80 million citizens and is economically strong, and perhaps we have to be a little bit more careful than others when we represent our own interests. But we do have interests, and we do not agree with everybody always, and neither do you with us. Let me point out that there's about 90 cases before the European Court of Justice, and we have accepted all of the judgments, even the ones that didn't suit us. And we know that there are differences of opinion. My friends in the EPP are of a different opinion than I am on Nord Stream. I think when it comes to what we do about climate change, we will be using more gas, and in a country such as Germany that is not going to have nuclear power at all in some years' time and is concentrating on renewable energy for the future and is making a very considerable contribution to protecting the climate in that way. But that we know at the same time, if we're going to leave coal behind, we're going to use gas for a bridging period, and the gas imports need to be diversified. But we won't exclude Russia as a source, and I'm very keen to ensure that Ukraine as a transit country doesn't come off badly, but whether it comes via Ukraine or North Stream or South Stream, these are Russian gas molecules, and Europe won't be able to be independent of Russian gas. It needs to diversify its sources. So Germany is going to be building an LNG terminal so that we will be able to deal with other possibilities for gas imports if some of the others dry up. But we are going to be getting out of nuclear. We're going to be stopping coal. We do need renewable energy, but also a part of that needs to be gas for a period. Secondly, the community method and the intergovernmental method, these have been mentioned. I would like to say that the community method, as far as Germany is concerned, has always been strengthened and will always be strengthened. But in the European Council at the moment, we're in a situation where it's almost a motto that the European treaties can never ever be changed. Let me be frank with you, that if you're going to align yourself with that thinking, then Europe is going to become sclerotic. We have a community which faces new challenges and must react to them, and must therefore be able to face the future with treaties that can be changed. And I simply do not accept and cannot understand that you would have a motto that you would never change the treaties. But if you wish to act in a European way, and the treaties don't give you the power to do that, and I've always said that the ESM needs to be in the Eurozone protocol of the Lisbon Treaty, it's not down to Germany. We could do that tomorrow. But it's not very easy to get a majority in the European Council for that. And if we can't do that, then as a pre-stage to being able to act jointly, we need the intergovernmental approach, and it would have been far worse in the currency union if we'd not had that. So the one does not exclude the other, and I am pleading expressly that we don't take treaty change as an end in itself, but we do not exclude it and saying we'll never ever change our own constitutions back home, because were we to do that, then this would be a dereliction of our duty as a nation state. That brings me on to the point that was mentioned by quite a few groups and would appear to be mutually exchangeable. You know as well as I do that this is the case, but if you've got a constitution or a basic law, as we do in Germany, then you have to have two-thirds majority for it to be adopted. And nevertheless, whenever you set about legislating on the basis of it, you get disputes. And if it's to do with the basis of the European Union, well, fortunately, in this House, there is a large group which agrees on the basics, the foundations. That's what you need. And then you can get into intensive debate about how you put the basic principles together. But whenever we talk about those principles, there is fortunately always a majority. Now, what role is to be played by Germany? You want us to do two things at one and the same time. You want us to be visionary and lead the way with France, for example, but of course also guarantee that the vision is close to reality. So the European Council with 28 and future 27 will adopt things unanimously. Now that is a tension between vision and feasibility between member states. And that must not be a growing gulf. At some point you have to enter into the realm of reality and achievability. And maybe when it comes to the setting of objectives, I may be somewhat reticent, but then there are people back home that want us to ensure that what we say is ultimately what we implement, and it is out of respect for the individual member states. When weighing up what is to be done, I have to think about the possible, trying to factor all of that into my thinking. Otherwise, visions and my own conceptualization, and I've been talking just a moment ago about changing the treaties, so that could be a vision, and reality is a growing gulf. And as far as I'm concerned, Germany has always played a role in bridging that, having ambitious goals, but at the same time making sure that there is respect for others who do not always wish to pursue the same things. And that is also part of what this EU is. A word now on migration. I've also got a limited speaking time, so let me move on to that. Migration. Now, we are all proud of our values. This is what Europe has been founded upon. Article 1 of our basic law in Germany talks about the inalienable nature of human dignity. But on our doorstep, there's a terrible civil war, and there's a huge challenge facing us with IS and Islamist terror. And Mrs. Zimmer, let me just give you one example in G7 to illustrate what the German government was thinking about when we supported the Peshmerga with weapons to avoid a genocide. And we decided that we would support them. And I think that was the right decision, even if it was not an easy decision to make. And I will continue by saying this. We have a close migration partnership that's been established with Niger. It's one of the poorest countries in the world. There are terrorists coming in from Mali because of the failure of the international community in Libya. They have armed with weapons, the terrorists in Boko Haram from Nigeria as well, and the president of Niger. We say we could imagine training them, we could imagine doing some expenditure, but when it's a question of arming them to be able to fight the terrorists, well, Germany, I'm afraid, is not going to be part of that. The World Bank is not part of it. And we in the European Development Aid community have all stuck our heads in the sand. We don't get anywhere with that. And I think it's always better if African soldiers are prepared to fight their own terrorists, then we support them. But that's the way it has to be done. Now we say, well, our French friends will deal with that. That's just not honest. Now, further on migration, there's been a civil war There's still a civil war in Syria. There's terrorist Islam, and we've got 6 million refugees from Syria and Iraq, and maybe 6 or 7 million people in Lebanon have been taken in by Lebanon and Jordan. And we said at the start of the legislature, and I think I got this wrong, we didn't pay sufficient attention to people having at least $1 for eating and some form of education in these refugee camps. And the refugees came to us because they needed to save their lives. And now the whole of Europe, 500 million people, have said in the face of the 6 million Syrians, Iraqis, we've taken 1.15 million, and we've helped them in a very dramatic situation where many Europeans were helped in similar way in previous times. Do you really think that that is something which has put us in a position of being unable to act?